Hello and welcome to Raptors Today. Now, the Raptors lost against the Portland Trailblazers 114-105. And Jonesy, I'm going to start with you because let's just call it for what it is. That first half was probably the worst half that we've seen this season. They did bounce back in the fourth, so I'm going to leave it in your arms here. What do you want to touch first? The first half or the bounce back in the fourth?
Well, I'll touch them both, and let's start in chronological order and go into that first quarter where you're down 16-4 before you blink, and you've made. If you, Sherm, Jake, and I made one shot each, that would be more than the entire team at the first time out. You know, the 3 for, whatever they were, 3 for 21. They couldn't make a shot. And I think they compounded it, and Sherm made this point on Nightcap last night by allowing Portland to make shots. It's not like, oh, I'm not scoring, well, you're not going to score. It was as if they let Portland score so they could, well, not let, but Portland scored and they got the ball back, and then they hustle it up court and they try to get like a 6-point shot. You can't do that. The anatomy of a comeback, as we saw in the second half, and I'll touch on it here, is run, hold, run. Score a bucket, get a stop, quality trips, score a bucket, get a stop, and rinse, repeat. They might get a score in there, but if you're scoring 2 or 3 trips to their 1 and they're turning the ball over, even if you don't score and they turn the ball over and they're not getting shots, you're okay. That happened in the second half. The first half was just woeful. They had 15 points after a quarter, 34, 19 points in the second quarter, and they practically, had that output in the entire third quarter themselves. So it was a matter of not being focused. I don't even know if it was not ready to play, because they had good looks that didn't go down. They just weren't focused on the defensive end, and it got away from them. And I tell you, they had me looking up the biggest comeback in Raptors history, which was 30 points against the Dallas Mavericks in December of 2019. They were almost there. They got it down to 4, but you just can't climb that big a hill when you dig yourself that big a hole early on.
Exactly. And Sherm, like as Jonesy was saying, they did manage to bring it within 4 points, but I'm curious about the conversation and what you would say as a player yourself, Sherm, if you're in that locker room to turn around by halftime.
You know what, I know, right? I got to keep this real PG, but I will say this. I think when we're talking about the atmosphere in a locker room, when you're basically getting your head kicked in, it doesn't change in the locker room. You know what's happening on the court. So there's nothing that's said in the locker room that you don't already know walking off the court. And I really don't think the paint wasn't being peeled off the walls. I don't think that guys were at each other's throat. I think it's one of those things where it's like, all right, enough. We're better than this. Let's get out there and do it. I don't think there's a big conversation about what needs to happen and who's not getting it done and all that. I think collectively they knew everybody that was on the floor just wasn't getting it done. So nobody could point the finger. But in a responsible and an accountable environment, you have players that sometimes you can just look at the other guy and the message is sent, the message is received, and nothing is said. I don't think a lot of words were shared in there. And honestly, I'm the kind of nerd that looks at the game again. Last night I came home, looked at the game again, and they had good looks. It's not like all the shots they took were contested or forced. They had some point-blank shots that they missed. And you talk about, as Jonesy talked about, a 16-3 lead or whatever like that before you blink. Well, you make 2 of those buckets, it could be a 16-10. It could be a 16-9 lead. That feels completely different in that scenario. So I think they looked at themselves and said, we had some plays we could have made. But the biggest issue is that they are shooting at such a high field goal percentage. It's just exasperating our misses. It's making it look bigger than it is. They needed to play defense. And that to me is something that they all collectively could agree on. And coming out of the locker room, as we talked about off air a little bit, they were out early from the locker room. They were out warming up. They were out shooting the ball. Coaches and players were out of the locker room. So that not much was said because there was an understanding of what needed to be done coming out of that locker room.
Real quick, Sherm, how impressed were you with their full court press?
Very. I mean, it reminded me of a college atmosphere at times, in terms of the energy and the expenditure and the extension of the defense. And, on the NBA level, Sav, they don't do that consistently the way the Raptors did last night. But they did it because they had to change the pace of the game. They needed the ball back. They needed to create some tempo. But I was really impressed at the activity, the ability to communicate, and set those traps without fouling. They got Portland into ideal trapping situations multiple times and didn't bail them out. They created a turnover. In that third quarter, they forced 7 turnovers, and they scored off those turnovers. The first half, they only had 10 turnovers combined in terms of being able to force turnovers. So their energy and their intensity really flustered, I think, Portland. And I think, Sav, that it was executed very, very well.
Yeah, I was super impressed myself. You're right. That college basketball atmosphere. And if there was fans in the building, they'd all be on their feet as that's happening.
Sav, that's a great point. That's something that was missing. And here are the Raptors at that disadvantage. The invisible sixth man, and that puts more pressure on the opponent. Heck, it puts pressure on the referees. Some of those calls that were questionable, the crowd is getting on the referees for that. And maybe it yields and it nets a call next time down. So I thought yesterday I really felt and they did a great job of creating their own energy, but I really felt that if there are fans in the building, maybe we see a historic comeback.
Absolutely. We're now going to hear from head coach Nick Nurse following the game.
I don't know. It's too bad that we had one of those games, Doug, to be honest, because again, I think we've played really hard and tough and really focused and all that stuff, and just it was just tough to do everything tonight. We weren't moving, we weren't thinking very well early. And, the only thing I can say, give them a hell of a lot of credit for not quitting. They kept fighting and we didn't really have much of a foundation to play from tonight. But, which means we had to, if we were going to try to get back into it, we were going to have to, make it a little funky out there, which we did. And we did a pretty good job at that, and fought hard. So, could have easily been a 30-point. It doesn't really matter that it wasn't 30, but it does say that we've got some guys that'll keep fighting and playing. No, I just think it was just a really we had really super low energy. Just again it was, and usually we'll try everybody and anybody and keep moving guys around and try to find a unit that works, and we couldn't really get that done either. Usually we can get off to a 16-4 bad start, but usually, you end up getting to the half and you're saying, okay, it's only 9 or 11 or something, and you're like, we're actually a lot better off than we probably should be or whatever. But tonight it was a lot worse than it probably should have been, to be honest. So, we just a whole kind of collectively not ready to go. Starters off the bench, anybody tonight? Well, I think a couple of those guys did a good job. I think Chris, was fairly impactful. Justin obviously checked in and hit a couple shots. I thought Delano, did a good job of just, his stretch. He probably had a pretty good plus. Yeah, 14. His stretch was really good. Be just again with some pace and shot creation for some people. A couple of them. Yeah, no, I think so. I think, we've toyed around with some of that stuff before, Aaron. I think that it's a possible change of rhythm. It's a second unit thing, maybe. It's a start the quarter thing you could do, I think in the course of the game. Usually, teams will attack and go down and beat a lot of that stuff. But, they were trying to protect a big lead and playing pretty tentatively against it and all those things. Those shots are tough when you're way up and you're getting pressed, and all of a sudden you find yourself alone in the corner. You're wondering, should I shoot this or shouldn't I? And if you do that, you miss a lot of those. About the only time they missed tonight is when we left them completely wide open. I don't know if I'm surprised, Doug. I'm just like I don't think any of the other nights we've just been alternating. right, between Scotty and Pascal, and again, and neither one of them have had much problem with pressure either. But again, I just think it was a funky energy night that we just again weren't quite moving as confidently or as quickly as we needed to, or would have liked to.
Jonesy, going straight to you with this one. Gary Trent Jr.'s return. We saw him play against the Portland Trailblazers. Of course, not the best performance, but as we talked about in the first segment, of course, nobody really stood out this game. But how do you think his presence can impact the Raptors going forward? You know, he was missed.
He was, and you know, it was his former team, so you know there was a little extra jump, a little extra juice. He did look rusty, the same way he did against Washington on Friday night. It's going to take him a couple of games to get his legs back and get his timing back. He had some good looks that he didn't knock down, although I will say this, late in the game, in the midst of that run, he seemed to find it a little bit and knock down a couple of big threes. And it's the other end of the floor, though, Sav. Sometimes, you know, we talk about those finely tuned skills of the passing, the ball handling, the shooting, you know, the making your moves, getting to the basket, finishing in tough circumstances. That's not always going to be there, but there's no excuse not to have all that you can give on the other end. Defense is sometimes just a measure of effort and energy. Gary Trent Jr. is really, he's become a good defender. So, you know, what do I expect from him going forward? To refine his offensive game, you know, get his shooting, get his timing back on the offensive end, but continue to be the guy that's one of the you know, more pesky and better defenders on the perimeter for Toronto, just pressuring guys and reaching in. He's still in the top 4 or 5 in deflections in the NBA. Those opportunities can happen every night, regardless of what's happening on the offensive end. So I'm willing to give him some time. I mean, he's been off, he's been injured, take some time. They don't practice as much. So give him a couple games, and I think you're going to see the Gary Trent Jr. that we saw earlier and the guy who's going to be a better version down the road.
And how many times have we heard that your defense can spark your offense as well? Sure, you know, we saw Nick Nurse honestly looking for more answers, so he went further into the bench this game against Portland. Who do you think had a positive impact that we haven't seen in a while?
Well, to your point, Steph, I mean, Nick Nurse went 10 deep. We haven't seen Nick Nurse do that in a long time, and it was a function of necessity. He needed to find some energy, needed to find some flow, and he was just searching for any kind of lift in a very, very tough situation. And you know, you can't look at the stats to really determine anybody's impact off the bench. But I think Delano Banton, in his minutes on the floor, I thought he was solid. I thought his activity defensively, you know, when he had his opportunities to score, he did. But overall, you know, a couple of steals, a function of that press. He was very active in that press with his long arms, his ranginess, and he created some disruption. So in a game like this, when you're looking at, you know, the positives of a player entering the game off the bench, you can't look at the stat line. You have to do the eyeball test and see, did he have impact? I mean, it's such a huge deficit. How are you helping reduce that deficit? And I thought Delano did that. And you just hope that he can continue to get opportunities. But, you know, when a young player like Delano enters a game, it's a different grading skill than, say, a Scotty Barnes, who is a starter and a guy who is expected to do so much more because he has so much more leeway. It's a more narrowed lane for Delano. And in that lane, you're trying to figure out, is he doing what he needs to do? Is he improving and things like that? And I thought for a guy who hasn't played in a bit, who was a part of the rotation at one point, I thought he got into the game and he played some solid basketball under the circumstances.
Absolutely. And now we're going to hear from the team following the Portland Trailblazers game.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those games, but it's just tough to find energy, and then I feel like nothing was going our way. But I mean, I like every time we down, I just think that always tell ourselves is just like, you know, let's keep going, let's just keep fighting. I think that's a group of guys that we have, and you know, I just try to, you know, keep everyone energy high as high as we can, you know, continue to encourage and be positive. Like that's all you can be at that time. You know, let's chip away. Let's try to, you know, make a couple of runs and make them call timeouts. like that's kind of like what's going through our minds, you know. I mean, for a lot of the game, you know, things wasn't going our way. So, but I think we just kept like we got to keep going, we got to keep fighting. Yeah, it's tough, but I'm super proud of the guys, man. Like I think like you know, I've been in the league for a little bit, and I just feel like every time teams are down like that, it's just like you know we kind of pack it in and but I'm proud of the guys for just continue to fight and you know those are the type of guys that you want to go to war with. It's like at the end of the day, like things weren't going our way, but like we gotta keep going, we gotta keep fighting, like find a way, and you know we did spend a lot of energy, but like I just think that everyone gave their all, and that's all you can ask for, and obviously like it wasn't the way that we wanted to play the game, but things happen, and once it does, we just gotta continue to fight, and I think I love our fight tonight. I mean, it's tough to press like that. I mean, like you play in the NBA, like you know the guys are really good, so. I think you know sometimes we can get into that. I think because we have the athlete to do that. We have the athletes to do that. So maybe we can. But I just think that it was just like a situation we had to go again and find wherever we can. But I think we always a team that want to press and make guys uncomfortable.
You know, like I said in the past, you know, playing in the G League is not too far-fetched from playing up here. You know, down there we preach the same pillars and, you know, preach the same things on defense. So kind of just coming in, playing to our pillars and playing with energy, and, you know, kind of trying to let everything else fall in place. And, you know, games like this is kind of guys off the bench. We just need energy to get these guys going, you know, get the guys who started off the game going. And, you know, like when we come in and pick it up, then you see their intensity start going up too. So kind of just bringing energy in off the bench and be where I can to help, kind of just running around, flying around, and, you know, trying to do as much little things as I can. Definitely, you know, like I said, I'll never take an opportunity off to play for Coach Mutombo in the 905. Like I said, it keeps me sharp, keeps me ready to go. And like when I get opportunities to play like yesterday and come in today, I feel like I haven't missed a beat, and coming in running the same actions, you know, trying to get guys involved and just do the little things. And, you know, it's definitely a big role change, not having the ball in my hand as much and not playing with as much freedom. But, you know, when you play at this level and you're a young guy, you're a rookie, you have to learn how to gel with other talented players. And that's what I feel like I'm trying to do right now. So, you know, just going out there, playing to where I can, and, you know, just having these guys out there like Fred, you know, he doesn't ever fail to share his advice and drop his knowledge on me. So, you know, him as long as all the other guys. So, you know, it's good, and, you know, I have the guys behind me to support me and keep me going. You know, it's everyone. You know, it's everyone from the coaching staff to the players. We feel like, you know, we're never out of a game until the game's over. So, you know, we feel like just like how they can go up, we could catch back up. You know, so they went up in a half, and we felt like, you know, if we just do what we have to do and come out strong and play with a little more desperation, play with a little more pace, that, you know, we could cut it down, which we did, and we actually gave ourselves a chance to win the game. So, you know, we never feel like we're ever going to be out of it, whether it's 20, 30, we're going to go to the final buzzer like we did today. And, you know, I'm happy that we showed that we're going to do that, and, you know, just looking to bounce back next game and continue to do what we're going to do to win.
Now we're going to hear from Amy Audibert.
Thanks, Sav, and happy Monday. Let's dive into the 905 because they're off to a 7-2 start. After their showcase season, they made some roster changes, and they've come flying out of the gate here. They've added Justin Smith and Canadian Aaron Best, while returning Ashton Haggins. He's off to a great start along with Kevon Harris, and Reggie Perry, of course, averaging his 18 and 11 double-double through these first 9 games. The 905 are one of the top defensive teams in the G League so far, only giving up 103 points per game. And another face that you can say is new to the 905, but not to the Toronto Raptors. He was on the 2019 championship team. The 905 welcomed Jody Meeks, and he's been a great addition. I mean, this is a 10-year pro. Last week, he went 4 for 4 from the 3 in a 4-minute stretch in the first quarter. He can still shoot the ball. He certainly can get off the bounce as well. But Sav, the 905 lead the G League in 5 clutch wins. That means they're figuring out a way to seal a deal in tight situations. I'd like to believe that having a veteran like Jody certainly helps. Now let's touch on Rexdale's finest, Delano Banton. He has been on assignment for 3 games with the 905 in January. And, well, let's start with the 36 minutes he's averaging. Nick Nurse has tightened up his rotation, so finding somewhere for Delano to still get some run and still get some reps. Here we are at the 905. He's also averaging 28 points, 11 rebounds, and over 6 assists in those 3 games, shooting 51% from the field. This is exactly why you utilize your G League program to get your guys those opportunities, those reps, those touches, because we saw Delano go in against Portland last night, the first time he's checked in for the Raptors in a while. He looked comfortable. He looked great and confident. He's getting that experience with the 905, who, as I mentioned before, still have those strong defensive pillars as well.
Now, the Toronto Raptors will be facing the Charlotte Hornets next. So, our super producer had to pull some stats for everyone. The Hornets are hot right now. They're 7-2 in their last 9 games, and they're averaging a winning number of 7.2 points per game. So, Jonesy, I ask you, how good is this Hornets team?
That's a pretty good winning margin. And they're young. They're exciting. This is a team that's on the come up. They hired James Borrego a few years ago. I think Michael Jordan and management is going to be patient with him. He's got a veteran assistant, Canadian Jay Triano, in there to help him out, who's been through rebuilds, and they've got some dynamic players. Now, the issue is getting them to defend consistently. They will go up and down. I know Sherman's going to hit on one of their duos, but LaMelo Ball will get that rock up and down. He's exciting. They play with pace. They sell tickets, but the problem has been defensively. They're near the bottom in defensive rating, although in the last 10 games, they've picked it up and they are near the top. So for them, it's a matter of defending consistently. If the Raptors can entice Charlotte into one of those up and down type games, and they can have the wrong people handling the ball at the wrong time, even LaMelo can be turnover prone at times. I think you're going to see an exciting game, and the Raptors, have a good chance at winning. But don't sleep on this Charlotte team. They're a young team on the come up, and they're going to be trouble in the future.
You talked about LaMelo, but there's also in that duo you mentioned Miles Bridges as well. So, Sherm, how electric or how exciting it is to see them play together.
Oh, it's very exciting. I mean, LaMelo Ball has all the flair, the stage presence, the highlight reel playmaking ability that you want, both with scoring the basketball and passing the basketball. And then Miles Bridges is an absolute monster when it comes to attacking the rim with the way that he can abuse the rim. So you put those two elements together, and both these guys create a lot of excitement. And when we talk about Charlotte building for the future, you've got some pieces that you can build around and continue to develop, because they're very young players. And Miles Bridges should be in the conversation for most improved player. He's averaging almost 8 points more per season this year. He's doing a great job scoring the basketball. So I just think that these two young guys, with the way they play, they're very aggressive. They have no back down in them, but they make highlight reel plays. And, if you're not winning all the time like you want to, at least put your name on the map. And Charlotte's doing that because of these two young guys and the way that they've been able to really establish themselves as high-level playmakers in the league.
Absolutely. Now, you could watch the game Tuesday, January 25th. Watch it on Sportsnet as well as listen to it on Sportsnet on radio. From Savanna Hamilton, Sherman Hamilton, Paul Jones, Amy Audibert, Jake LaRue, and Garth, thank you for watching another episode of Raptors Today.